Here are some of the big stories we'll be watching this week. Kim Jong-un hosts South Korean President Moon Jae-In in Pyongyang. Investors will be watching an international aluminium conference in Shanghai, and Nike shareholders convene at their annual meeting as controversy surrounds the company's recent advertising campaign. First up, South Korean President Moon Jae-In will this week travel to Pyongyang to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The three-day summit, which kicks off on Tuesday, is the third meeting between the two men this year. Mr. Moon hopes the meeting will help bolster pledges to end hostilities on the Korean peninsula, which remains a potential flashpoint in the region despite a current period of rapprochement. Mr. Moon will also look to contribute to negotiations between the US and North Korea over the issue of denuclearization. Talks between Washington and Pyongyang are currently stalled, although both sides are planning a summit of their own in a bid to move relations forward.
President Moon's visit to Pyongyang once again underscores Seoul's crucial role as a bridge between North Korea and the United States. When the Singapore summit looked set to fall apart back in May, it took a timed intervention from the South Korean leader to set things straight. Now Mr. Moon will again be hoping to work his magic by bridging the political and cultural gap between the two sides. Much is riding on this. With a slowing economy dragging on his approval ratings at home, Mr. Moon is in need of a political win.
Now to Shanghai, where the AZ China Aluminium Conference will be held next week. The meeting comes at a fraught time in aluminium markets. The price of the metal spiked in April after US sanctions against Russian producer Rusal, but prices have since fallen by 21%. Meanwhile, there are concerns over global demand for aluminium following a sell-off in emerging market currencies, and President Donald Trump's tariffs have also increased uncertainty over global trade flows.
The AZ conference in Shanghai comes at a very interesting point in the market for aluminium, which this year has been roiled by trade tensions and tariffs launched by President Trump, but in particular sanctions against Russian producer Rusal, which is the largest producer outside of China. If these sanctions continue, Rusal metal won't be available, so it's got to come from somewhere else, and Chinese producers could be big beneficiaries of that. So there's a lot of uncertainty about how that's going to affect global trade flows and who will get exceptions from these tariffs. For China, there's also another issue, which is environmental protection, and the Chinese government has tried to curb production of aluminium, which uses a lot of power in order to reduce pollution. But obviously it's trying to also stimulate the economy in the face of a deepening trade war. So people want to know what path is it going to take.
And finally, Nike will hold its annual shareholder meeting on Thursday. Earlier this month, the company unveiled a new advertising campaign featuring Colin Kaepernick, the former NFL quarterback, who knelt during the US national anthem in order to draw attention to police brutality towards African Americans. Nike's endorsement of Kaepernick drew noisy protests, including criticism from President Donald Trump. But despite the backlash, early indications are that the company could perform well off the back of the controversial campaign, as Nike CEO Mark Parker will be keen to stress.
The immediate reaction from Nike investors, as surveys came out showing its brand had taken quite a hit from this ad campaign, was to mark the stock down. But Mr. Parker should be able to point to some more encouraging signs in the aftermath. Edison Research showed that its online sales were up 31% in the days after the ad aired, suggesting that it has managed to resonate with a core audience of Nike consumers, who are mostly young, mostly urban, many of them minorities. There are also encouraging signs from the stock market. Nike's stock is now back up above where it was before the ad first aired, which should give Mr. Parker a following win for this meeting. It's worth remembering the name of the venue in which this year's annual meeting is taking place. It's called the Tiger Woods Conference Center. That should be a reminder that Nike has a very long history of sticking by controversial athletes. I expect it to do exactly the same this time.
And that's what the week ahead looks like from the Financial Times in London.